Unraveling is a website that is a deep mystery in and of itself, housing links to some of the oddest search queries online. But what caught user eMushmush's attention on Reddit about 2 years ago was a very specific article by the name of Son Holding His Mom Head No Blur Picture. The article is about a vile creature named Bashid McLean, who, as you may have guessed, based on the article's title, decapitated his mother. eMushmush, who later posted a link to the article on Reddit, was simply searching for more information on the case, and like the dozens of other sites he had been on, began to read the article about the situation. Except this rendition from the Hanoi Spirit of Place website was no normal description. In fact, rather than discrediting the actions of the decapitator, it discusses them in a glowing light, portraying them as a great good and going so far as to refer to the action as a mother-son bonding moment that has thankfully been preserved in image form. Don't believe me? Here's a snippet from the article. The striking image of a son holding his mom head no blur picture in a crystal clear picture captures a moment of love and connection. Through this profound picture, the bond between a mother and son is beautifully encapsulated, showcasing the undeniable strength and tenderness that exists within their relationship. Not exactly the sort of thing you read every day, and in my opinion, whoever wrote this article should probably have their backyard dug up just in case. Except upon reading everything else, the question isn't so much who wrote this article, but what wrote this article. I'll elaborate. As you read the article, it becomes clear based on the language that the author of this has no idea what they are talking about. For instance, almost every paragraph is just a very similar reworded copy of the previous. Moreover, throughout the entire piece, the image in question is only ever referred to as mom head no blur picture or son holding mom head no blur picture. These factors and many others suggest that this was written by AI, which you can't blame for horrifying creations like this. In the same way, you can't blame a kid for painting on walls when you leave him alone with a bucket of Sharon Williams' Midnight Blue. However, it makes this article no less creepy in my mind because someone must have read what was written before it was uploaded, and yet it still got online. Seriously, even 3 words would have told you this probably isn't quite right. But perhaps this is exactly what the author intended, as the likely reason for this article existing as it does is because he is trying to generate website traffic by slamming as many keywords into his article as possible, so a site shows up higher upon an initial search. This way, he generates more traffic and thereby more revenue. This is not altogether an uncommon practice, but seeing it done in this way is a first for me and for many. But even with that in mind, why he chose to have the AI write such a glowing review of Matricide is beyond reason, as one could have included just as many keywords in an article that denounced the actions rather than praised them. Instead, the creator willingly chose to glorify this decapitation of a mother by her son. So perhaps maybe the man behind the machine really does share the same glowing thoughts about what took place that day. And like I mentioned earlier, if you continue on with his other articles, you get the same weird vibe. And in fact, you can see some similar trends even where in one case there is an axe-wielding maniac and the writer is far from decrying the actions of the sadistic perpetrator. So bizarre, but only the beginning of our journey today. A warm-up set as it were. Back in 2013, an anonymous user posted to 4chan's export talking about a mysterious game he'd uncovered. And in his own words, he said the following: Hey/X, my dad bought a CD at a computer expo in Rochester, New York a few years back. The CD itself was for some engineering software, but there was a second CD inside the CD case. There was no design or writing on it. And on the CD was a zip file called Station and a bunch of DLL files. The game itself is very strange, and I don't want to ruin it much, but it's a very crudely made game that takes place at some sort of field with 2 buildings. The goal is to escape the entities that are chasing you. Once they touch you, the game closes. I tried making an Angel Fire page to upload it, but it does not accept zip files. If anyone wants to attach their email, I can send you the file. I promise you this isn't a virus. I myself scanned it through a few times, and my computer seems to be clean. No doubt an intriguing concept, and as such, the post attracted quite a bit of attention. The divide was about even, with some taking Opie at his word and others assuming that this was some type of troll, and Opie just wanted to get people to download his malware, which on 4chan would be about the best case of what would be downloaded. But nonetheless, Opie tried to assuage doubts and promised this was all legit. But as the minutes moved on and he didn't upload the game file, suspicions grew. As we know, he apparently couldn't get the game file to upload onto a Dropbox. And so pretty quickly, the majority of people kind of wrote him off and told him to put up or shut up. And 25 minutes and 3 seconds later, we received a link, and this internet mystery was cemented into internet history. The game opens up into a poorly lit room. You find yourself surrounded by bare gray walls. Seeking the nearest exit to a strange building, you find it only to be met with an even stranger realization that the world outside is just as dark and mysterious. The sky is utterly pitch black with no stars. You begin walking around the building until you notice tanks of some kind, and you check them out for a second, assuming that there might be propane, but they could honestly be anything. And after this, a path leads you away from the facility. The path is a simple dirt road with 3 barren trees along it, suggesting that perhaps this game takes place during winter. However, taking the path too far, you're stopped by an invisible fence, forcing you backwards towards the station, where you find another feature to the strange place up here that juts into the water some ways with a light at the end of it. But this too only goes so far. There are a few more odd details like a random square sitting alongside the building, but not much else. And even if there was more to find before you can go much further than this happens. Yep, the moon, or what is commonly said to look like a moon, consumes you and the game completely shuts down, closing itself on your computer. Understandably, most people were completely stunned by this and wanted to know more. But according to Opie, this is all he knew. And despite his shared desire to know more, there was nothing else he could elucidate us with. And so, people began to rip the game apart. And in doing so, they found a clue written on one of the game's walls, which was a series of coordinates, or at least so we're told, because all that's left of them is preserved in this image. The image, and thereby the coordinates, are about as well preserved as milk that's been sitting in the sun since last August. And so, the coordinates are entirely unreadable. In all honesty, it could be a picture of my toesies for all we know, meaning that the coordinates once hidden in station. EXE, and possibly the answers to this entire mystery have now been lost forever. Just kidding. Someone else typed them in a later post. And by following them, we realize that this internet mystery goes another layer deeper and enters reality. Going over to satellite view and zooming in, we spot a building jutting out onto the placid water. And by any chance, do you recognize it? Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. It is the very same station from the game. The pier, the tanks, the building shape, and even the weird random cube structure are all here, identical to the game, which was clearly designed as an exact replica of this place. So, what's certain is that this is the place the creator of the game had wished to lead us. But why? Before we can answer that, let's take a step back and answer what and where this place is. The area where the station is located is India, which is a frontier town on the outskirts of Siberian Russia. If you're not aware, that's basically the edge of all civilization. And Mary's claim to fame is that at one point it housed the second largest diamond mine on Earth. In 2004, though, everything was suddenly abandoned, with much of the mine being filled with water. This was in large part due to the fact that the workers were not much better than slaves, and several had been drowned in a mining accident, alongside the fact that the mining operation had become more expensive than the profit that was being made. Now, this all makes sense for most. However, another reason began to crop up with time deep on the internet, that Mia had been housing some other work not mining related, but instead covert experiments. And seemingly there is actually some real-world evidence of this beyond just rumor and speculation online. Although you can't get within a mile of the station on Google at the entrance road, there is a sign in Russian that says JSCL Rozatailing Dam of the Factory Number 3, third phase of the project, 7.5 kilometers. Which makes me and many others ask, what is the project? And no one really seems to know. Some think it's just another mining operation, while others aren't so sure because there isn't really much reference to this at all online. And as we know, the main mining operation was shut down over 20 years ago. So, going back over to the station, we are left to wonder what it's doing here and what its purpose actually was. And although this area also appears to be a mine, it too seems to have been drowned and left to rot, and as of today appears to be inactive. In fact, looking around, our station seems to be nearly the only building still standing in the region, just sitting there alone by the water's edge. But I digress. Let's leave the mines behind for a moment so we can scroll over to the nearest city of Mia, which for roughly 50 years has supplied these mines with workers and supplies. The city would definitely be strange to most Westerners, and it looks much the same as it did about 50 years ago, with the main government building in the town center still hosting a Soviet emblem. It's the kind of city that almost no one visits and that no one ever really leaves. And beyond that, one strange thing that's cropped up in recent years for the city of Murray and its people is a phenomena that relates directly back to station.exe. The Wikipedia entry for the city of Murray contains about 4 jelly beans in a kazoo worth of information. In other words, almost nothing. But it does include an interesting section entitled Transportation. And within this, we read the following. The town is served by Mia Airport. Safety concerns have been raised about aircraft operations near to the open diamond mine. Helicopters are forbidden to pass over the abandoned workings. The implication here is that helicopters have previously been brought down by something related to the mine, or maybe even the mine itself, and there are some people who have studied this phenomenon, and there are theories about this. However, I'm going to take a different route. I'm willing to wager that there is probably some sort of connection to the diamond mine and the station. And now, I'm not going to suggest that there are killer moons eating people and dragging down helicopters, but I do wonder if the moons are symbolic for what's actually bringing these helicopters down, and what these alleged experiments that happened in and around the station really entailed. But hey, what do I know, guys? I'm just a dude that yaps online. If you're curious to learn more though, there is a lot more to this mystery. So, write synthetic potatoes in the comments below, and I will do a full dive into station.exe. This is the video that inspired me to do another Instagram Mysteries upload because boy, this is crazy. William Banks is by all appearances a convict imprisoned in the state of Connecticut for what his website states as being 5 counts of larceny in the 6th degree. He began his sentence on November 15th and was meant to serve a total of 8 months and would have gotten out on July 15th of 2025. Except he got out early, but not on good behavior, but because he found a way out of prison and along with several of his friends and fellow inmates escaped. And during this escape, he filmed the entire process and then uploaded it to Instagram, TikTok, and X. Bear with me here because this may sound like too much to believe, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. So, diving into William Banks's social media presence, we can view his path from fairly odd but relatively harmless guy who kind of posts sometimes online to a full-fledged convict and sentenced inmate. For our sake, his process on social media begins when he starts detailing his experience, leaving his friends and family behind as well as his prison preparations. And after this point, he goes silent for nearly 2 whole weeks. And during this period, there truly is absolutely nothing about him online. But then there's a blip on the radar when William uploads this photo that blew up. And man, does he make a convincing case that this may be real. Based on the picture in the background, he is certainly in prison. And beside him are his 2 cohorts who fit the bill and become characters throughout this whole thing. Following this picture, we then get a video where he introduces himself to the world and begins a series depicting his experience with several uploads a week. Guys, so I just wanted to make a video giving everybody an update of the things that have been going on in my life. I know a lot of people were concerned about me going to jail. So, and some of these uploads are pretty hilarious, especially this gem. Is there anything you'd like to say on the video? Of course not. I'm in prison. Yeah, me too. However, others are a little darker as William describes the abuse he's receiving from some of his other inmates. Throughout it all, though, it's extremely evident that William is actually in a prison. This is not a set. It is a genuine bona fide prison, which caused me to ask a few questions. The main being that is this somehow being faked? And here's what I think about that. Initially, I asked myself if maybe he got permission to use an out-of-commission prison. However, even now he's not nearly prominent enough of a creator to be renting out a prison for a multi-month video shoot and also hire actors. It's just not feasible. Meaning that if this is fake, the only other way he could get this to work is to somehow break into an abandoned prison and film there. Once again though, we see at least a dozen different inmates in these videos, which makes the idea of sneaking in unnoticed basically impossible. Additionally, the electricity is on, which means this facility is still used to some extent. And in the past, even on this channel, I have certainly procured entrance to some less public locks. However, those are one and done, as the more times you try and enter a place, the more likely you are to get caught. Especially if this were an abandoned prison, there'd be a lot of cameras and security. So I'm left, despite my better judgment, to think that in one way or another, this actually is real. And that's further evidenced by how it continues. William, after documenting his life in prison and his escape, goes on to document his experience as a fugitive, showing his entire time on the run and posting his location at various intervals. He goes on to meet a girl while hitchhiking and link up with a cellmate who he refers to as his best friend. Although clearly this guy wants nothing to do with William. And as of now, he's seemingly just continuing to live this fugitive life, racking up years on his prison sentence like there's no tomorrow. What was originally an 8-month prison sentence for several misdemeanors and slightly more elevated crimes, of which he had served at least half of, has now become at least a 15-year stint in the clink, if this is all real. In fact, in one video alone, William added something like 10 years to his prison term because he managed to upload to Instagram a video of him and his chick dancing with guns in a motel bathroom to the Black Eyed Peas of all things. I can't even make this stuff up. And fugitives, I should add. Possessing guns in the States is a big no-no. Almost as much as getting caught dancing with that hairline, bro. But seriously, my gut tells me this has to be fake, at least in some way. But I just don't know how that would be possible. I also know and have met people this stupid. They really do exist, so it's within the realm of possibility. Okay guys, I was in the middle of filming the end of this video and editing it. And then, of course, I had to look up William Banks one last time. Make sure I had all the most recent information. And turns out a couple of articles dropped talking about how this is all fake and it was shot in one day. And then on William's Instagram and TikTok they uploaded videos of him being arrested by the police. Clearly real police, not the fake ones that the Ag family hired. And now I have no idea what to end this video with. So I'm just going to ask you guys what you think about this whole situation. Do you think William Banks is innocent and made it all up? Or do you think William Banks is actually a felon who did all this dumb stuff? If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I want you to comment where's the lamb sauce in the comments to confuse everyone else who didn't make it here. And with that, you guys, thank you so much for watching and I can't wait to see each and every one of you in the next one.